Boys and girls, our next book during soft start for the next couple of days is going to focus on election day coming up. So we're going to learn some history, and it is titled The Next President, written by Kate Messner. Quick, name the President of the United States. No matter when you read this book, there's only one right answer to that question, because America only has one president at a time. Working on manipulating this, sorry. But no matter who holds the job right now, the presidents of tomorrow are always out there, somewhere. Some already know they'd like to run the country one day. Some are learning how government works as members of Congress or representatives in state, local, or student government. Oh. And some don't have a clue yet that one day they'll be president. (1789). When George Washington became the first president of the United States, there were 9 future presidents already alive in America. 4 of them were working alongside Washington in the nation's new capital. President 2, John Adams, was Washington's vice president. Adams was known for having a short temper and getting into arguments. He was the only one of the first 5 presidents who didn't enslave people. President 3, Thomas Jefferson, served as Secretary of State. In 1776, he had written the Declaration of Independence, which includes the words, "All men are created equal." Even though Jefferson enslaved hundreds of people on his Virginia plantation. President 4, James Madison, had grown up on a plantation in Virginia and now represented that state in the nation's new Congress. Madison wasn't always easy to hear with his quiet voice, and he ended up being America's smallest president. Madison was 5 feet 4 inches tall and only weighed about 100 pounds. President 5, James Monroe, had run for Congress too, but he'd lost to Madison. Monroe would be elected to the Senate the following year. Like many other future presidents, he'd intended to study law in college, but he dropped out to join the Army. In 1789, at the end of Washington's inauguration, Presidents 6 and 7 were both practicing law. President 6, John Quincy Adams, was about to open his own legal practice in Boston. As a boy, he traveled overseas with his father to ask France for help during the Revolutionary War. President 7, Andrew Jackson, was living in a boarding house in Nashville. Jackson was the son of Irish immigrants. His father had died before he was born, and he'd grown up with a reputation as an outsider with a furious temper. While Presidents 8, 9, and 12 were all kids, Presidents 10 and 11 hadn't been born yet. President 8, Martin Van Buren, was 7 years old, helping with chores on his parents' farm in Kinderhook, New York. President 9, William Henry Harrison, was 16 years old and studying medicine at the time. President 12, 4-year-old Zachary Taylor, was living with his 2 older brothers on the Kentucky farmland his father had given for father had been given for serving in the Revolutionary War. Snapshot. After 19 years in law and politics and another 23 years before he'd be president, Andrew Jackson was running a Tennessee cotton plantation. He'd been in fights and duels before, but this time it was more serious. It all started when a man named Charles Dickinson accused Jackson of cheating on a horse bet and insulted Jackson's wife. Dickinson fired the first shot and it hit Jackson close to his heart. But before Jackson fell, he fired back, killing Dickinson. The bullet that hit Jackson was too close to his heart for doctors to remove, and Jackson would carry it with him all the way to the White House in 1829. Snapshot. 33 years before he would be president, Abraham Lincoln was on his way to New Orleans working on a Mississippi riverboat full of farm produce. Lincoln cooked, navigated, and did whatever else was needed to help out. 1841, when William Henry Harrison became President 9, there were 14 future presidents alive. Most of them were already involved in politics somehow. President 10, John Tyler, had worked as a lawyer, congressman, and senator before he was elected to be Harrison's vice president. Some historians have called Tyler the accidental president because he had to take over when Harrison died of pneumonia just 31 days into his term. There, got stuck. Sorry. President 23. Little Benjamin Harrison, who was 7 years old, wasn't exactly there for the inauguration, but proudly wished he could have seen that moment. He must have been proud when his grandpa, William Henry Harrison, took the oath of office. President 11, Jackson K. Polk, had a setback that year. He had been governor of Tennessee, but didn't get reelected. He lost to a 6'2", 125-pound man with the nickname Lean Jimmy Jones. Polk didn't give up on politics, though. He started talking with people about his desire to be nominated for vice president. And little Zachary Taylor, President 12, was grown up and serving in the military now. 1841, Presidents 13, 14, 15, and 16 and 17 were all serving in government then. President 3, nope, 3 were well past. President 13, Millard Fillmore, who'd grown up as a quiet bookworm in central New York, was in Congress. President 14, Franklin Pierce, had been serving as senator, but left Washington in 1841 to go home to New Hampshire at his wife's request. President 15, James Buchanan, was in the Senate in 1841. 16 years later, he would become the only president who never got married. President 16, Abraham Lincoln, was serving in the Illinois legislature then. He'd done lots of other jobs before that. As a young man, Lincoln built things, sold groceries, did farm chores, and rowed a ferry boat. And President 17, Andrew Johnson, was elected to the state Senate in Tennessee. He'd moved there with a cart and pony way back in 1825 after he ran away from the tailor to whom he'd been apprenticed. 1841. Presidents 18 and 19 were both in college in 1841. President 18, Ulysses S. Grant, was attending the United States Military Academy at West Point, preparing for his time in the armed forces. President 19, Rutherford B. Hayes, was studying at Kenyon College, preparing for a career in law. He had a reputation as a pretty good cook, even though cooking in student rooms was against the rules. President 20, James Garfield, was working on an Ohio farm with his brothers and his mom. 21 and 22, so Presidents 20, 21, 22 were all busy growing up. President 21, Chester A. Arthur, was in school, but he moved around a lot with his father, a preacher who traveled from town to town. President 22 and later President 24, Grover Cleveland, also had a dad who was a preacher. His family traveled from church to church too. Whenever he could, he snuck away to fish. For President 23, see page 14. Little Benjamin Harris, who was 7 years old, wasn't actually there for the inauguration, but probably wished he could have seen that moment. He must have been proud when his grandpa, William Henry Harrison, took the oath of office. Snapshot. After serving in the Illinois General Assembly and losing a race for U.S. Senate, Abraham Lincoln finally made it to the White House and brought along 2 goats, Nanny and Nanko. Nanny used to get in trouble for eating blossoms out of the flower beds. Lincoln wasn't the only president with a penchant for pets. Warren Harding had an Arundel named Laddie Boy, who used to attend cabinet meetings with the president. When Calvin Coolidge was in the White House, Mr. Coolidge had a raccoon named Rebecca that she took for walks on a leash. And then there was William Johnson, hippopotamus, nicknamed Billy, a pygmy hippo the president received as a gift in 1927. Billy ended up spending most of his life at the National Zoo. Theodore Roosevelt's White House visitors might have met Bill the Lizard, Maud the Pig, Josiah the Badger, Baron Speckle the Hen, or Peter the Rabbit. The Roosevelts also had a hyena, a barn owl, some ducks in the fountain, and Icelandic pony named Eloquin, a small bear named Jonathan Edwards, and a handful of snakes. One of the snakes belonged to first daughter Alice, who said she named it Emily Spinach because it was green and as thin as her Aunt Emily. Meanwhile, Thomas Jefferson and William McKinley were partial to birds. Jefferson had a mockingbird named Dick who perched on his shoulders sometimes while he worked, and McKinley had a parrot named Washington Post who could supposedly whistle the song Yankee Doodle. (1897). We'll pick up here in the next president and hear the rest of the timeline of our presidencies.